Today on Further Every Day, we're going to be talking about we're back to our series on founding documents, opening up today. We're talking about Thoughts on Government from John Adams in April 27th, 1776. And kind of look back, yes, it was a good year, kind of look back on the purpose of our government and some of the philosophical premises that we're seeing broken today, and kind of do a bit of a post-mortem on some of the thoughts of our founding fathers. We're also going to look at the term black fatigue, and I'm actually going to start off by explaining it with a divorce case. You'll understand what I mean when we get there. Of course, we're going to get to some Steve Shenanigans and the 10th chapter of The Great Divorce. So we're going to have fun. Howdy, Jonathan Fiala for Further Every Day, sitting in the chair of philosophy to my left. Downstream of that, we got Charlie.
I be here.
And Chair Culture, how's it going?
Going great. And can we just take a moment and tell all of you families that have lost loved ones in the service, we are very grateful and humbled by their sacrifice. And we're not taking tomorrow off. We are remembering your loved ones.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yep, most definitely.
And to his left, we got Steve.
Yes, and being politically incorrect as always.
There we go.
That's a good thing.
We'll have some fun. So, real quick, because again, this will be airing on our channels on Memorial Day. That is tomorrow. For those of you who are regular listeners, we are on PSB, Patriot Soapbox, on Rumble, DLive, and Vaughn.live on PSB's channel. If you wish to comment and interact with us every day, every Sunday from 1 to 3 Central, God's time zone. So without further ado, let's go ahead and slide into John Adams's thoughts on government. April 27th, 1776. So obviously, at this point, John Adams is writing his philosophy out on what an American government should look like, because the American revolt and revolution is in full swing at this point. And there are those who are still looking to a parliamentary system, as you still see today in Canada. And in some of these other European nations, and people often say, well, why don't we go to a parliamentary system? A two-party system is terrible, et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to go to a parliamentary system. The constitutional republic that we live in is actually quite robust. And we look at some of the decisions of those other nations, we can see that it is actually very easy for someone like Trudeau, who had only won 30% of the vote for about a decade, was able to maintain power, even though he was wildly unpopular. So we actually have a really great foundation for government. And John Adams lays out, when being asked, what would you see a government look like? He lays out something that looks very similar to what we ultimately got in our Constitution all the way in 1776. It's important to remember, we incorporated under the Articles of Confederation a few years later, and we didn't actually have the Constitution until 1791. So this was something that was a long time coming, and it took a long way to get here. And you're going to see some terms that are not necessarily exactly what we have as of the 1791 Constitution, but it'll be fun. So with that, Mr. Producer, by the way, Rai, the producer guy in producer's chair, thank you for being here, bud.
My pleasure, John Arthur.
Go ahead and cue me up cut one, please. So we're going to go ahead and read through this. A little bit of history here. If I was equal to the task of forming a plan for the government of a colony, this is what he's being requested, I should be flattered with your request and very happy to comply with it, because as the divine science of politics is the science of social happiness, and the blessings of society depend entirely on the constitutions of government, which are generally institutions that last for many generations, there can be no employment more agreeable to a benevolent mind than a research after the best. This is John Adams, again, having been asked by multiple governors, and he is considered to be instrumental, if not directly responsible, for the government of Massachusetts as it was formed at the time. He was asked, how would you lay this out? So we're going to get a master class on how to lay out a Republican form of government. And we're also going to see how the 17th Amendment really has thrown a wrench in the original design and import of John Adams and other framers. But to continue, he goes on to say, Pope, speaking of Alexander Pope, cut 2, flatters tyrants too much when he said, "For forms of government, let fools contest. That which is best administered is best." Adams had some salty words. We were talking before we started. This guy is a savage, isn't he, Mr. Producer?
Yes, sir.
Cue it up, cut 3. "Nothing can be more fallacious than this," speaking of Alexander Pope's prose. "But poets read history to collect flowers, not fruits. They attend to fanciful images, not the effects of social institutions. Nothing is more certain from the history of nations and the nature of man than that some forms of government are better fitted for being well administered rather than others."
He's cooking.
He's cooking. And this is the oldest version of "shut up and dribble," or "shut up and write your poetry."
And for us today, when we read this, it sounds extremely poetic, and that's not what he's doing. In that day, that was the equivalent of a fist to the jaw, verbally speaking.
That's farmer speak.
Yeah.
That's farmer and your average everyday speak.
Put a lid on it is what he was saying.
Turns out using the King James Bible as your grade school primer led to some interesting things. I'll just say that. I'm going to put that out there. But, whatever. I'm not a King James onlyist, but it is my everyday driver, and for good reason. We won't get into those reasons today. But it's good stuff. So he's saying that there are some governments, not all governments are created equal. This idea of multiculturalism, all cultures are created equal, all governments are created equal. It's only how you administer it. It's just not true. In history, he says, the very issue of human nature, we need a republican form of government. And he goes on to explain why. Cut 4, Mr. Producer, if you would, please. "We ought to consider what is the end of government before we determine which is the best form." This is the wisdom of the founding fathers. "Upon this point, all speculative politicians will agree that the happiness of society is the end of government, as all divines and moral philosophers will agree that the happiness of the individual is the end of man. From this principle, it will follow that the form of government which communicates ease, comfort, and security, or in one word, happiness, to the greatest number of persons and to the greatest degree is the best." Now, you might mistake him for a utilitarian here. I don't believe that he's a utilitarian. When I say utilitarian, that's someone who believes that that which creates the most human flourishing, the most human pleasure, is the most moral. That's not what Adams is saying here, I don't believe. What he's saying is happiness in a moral people is going to be a society that is working well, one that is well oiled and well finished. And you'll see that from the context of the rest of this. I don't know if you have thoughts, Charlie.
Well, one of the things that went through my mind, the way that you worded that is really good, because looking at this, you could come to that conclusion. However, the best way to get to know somebody is to read some of their stuff.
Yes.
So for those of you that are into this kind of thing, into the historical kind of thing, there are definitely sources out there, books out there that have stuff like John Adams, quotes, many quotes, and you will get a taste of who he is. So I think the way that you worded it is really good. And if that is, do more reading if you really want an answer on that.
It's some beautiful stuff in it. Before you say that John Adams was narrow-minded, or before people, again, some folks will go the opposite direction. They'll say that he was not a Christian in the context of what we would imagine today, or that the nation wasn't Christian. But he does say this, and I believe that this means he is looked to the other philosophers to guide and set his understanding of what other nations have done. So this is the next cut, number 5, Mr. Producer. "All sober inquiries of truth, the ancient and modern, pagan and Christian, have declared that the happiness of man, as well as his dignity, consists in virtue." This is why I say he's not a utilitarian. "Confucius, Zoroaster, Socrates, Mahomet, not to mention authorities really sacred," notice how he says authorities really sacred, "have agreed in this. If there is a form of government, then," Mr. Producer, next cut, "whose principle and foundation is virtue, will not every sober man acknowledge it better calculated to promote the general happiness than any other form?" You see what I mean when he says, the cut number 5, we had not to mention the authority is really sacred. What he's referring to there is, again, the Christian value, but he's going all the way. He says, even the pagans, even those I disagree with, they would say that is based on virtue. Now, what is virtue? Some of those people will disagree. Muhammad, Zoroaster, Confucius, Jesus, they actually have some differences on what virtue is. And we're going to get into the difference between fear, honor, and virtue. And as we break this down from John Adams, I think you're going to see something really interesting here. The nation's pre-existing, beliefs, the priors, the convictions of a nation really change how that nation functions. And so building a government from the ground up with that in mind, John Adams and our framers were really hoping to build a virtuous or moral nation. And again, in their lexicon, that meant Christian. So he goes on to say, he lays out more, and I'm going to skip down a little bit here. But he goes
don't skip the next one.
No, we're not skipping the next one.
Okay.
No, we're not skipping the next one.
I'm like, man, that one's a big one.
I'm putting this in.
Okay.
Because
was fixing to
you
say,
gotta understand,
don't skip this one.
I've set. So guys, if you want to read the whole thing, link in the description on our channel. You can find this in our national archives. But I have, for these slides, I have cut things down just for the sake of time. We can't go through the whole pamphlet. But cut number 7, Mr. Producer. Fear is the foundation of most governments, but so is sordid and
But is so sordid
and brutal a passion, and renders men in whose breasts it predominates so stupid and miserable that Americans will not be likely to approve of any political institution on which it's founded.
Think about brilliant. That is brilliant.
He's talking about monarchies that have become tyrannies. That's what he's referring to in the context of the day. But he's referring to anything that bases its authority on fear. And today we kind of see that, I believe, in the Marxist, in the cultural Marxist paradigm. You see the fear not of just being canceled, but of being ostracized and removed from the community. In some cases, put into camps, like in Australia when you didn't take the jab, right? If you are in that situation, you are being ruled by fear. And because it's not a representative government with codified principles that are laid out, they have the ability, codified principles that are laid out where you are protected and the government acknowledges your pre-existing rights as an image bearer of God. If that is not in place, and fear of retribution from the authority is what is ruling you, that is where you see fear used, and it's being used right now, and we're watching it all across Europe, Australia, etc.
And the only reason that it's not gone further is because, and I want to be very careful here, folks. I love a lot of what Trump has done. He is the force that has allowed this to hit a brick wall at the moment. What makes me nervous is what will happen once he leaves office. And think about all of this that we've just talked about. What is the key attribute that Trump does not have? He has no fear. None.
What we want to see.
He's going to stand on what's right, and he knows he's got the backing for it. And I'm not talking of people. I'm talking of law. He's got it. So what Adams has put forth here is really a slam of what they've come from and want to go to.
Correct.
Here's one thing that this statement really applies to is you look at China and the Uyghurs.
Yep. 100%.
Yes.
Look what's going on with that situation. I mean, they've got fear, and they got them in camps. They're rounding them up, doing. It's horrible.
And
So
people.
when people say we are the world,
Oh boy.
I am not that part of the world.
Nope.
I am not. I do not align myself with that. And so there is a serious issue with China, right? China, and again, it's the Chinese Communist Party. For those of you who are too thick in the head to realize that's what I'm referring to, it's the Chinese Communist Party. That is the group with which I take issue. So fear is not the answer to ruling, but rather something else. Mr. Producer, next cut. He goes on to say, honor is truly sacred, but holds a lower rank in the scale of moral excellence than virtue. Indeed, the former is a part of the latter and consequently has not equal pretensions to support a frame of government of productive human happiness. What he's saying is virtue is morality under God in John Adams's framework. Honor, respect, a adherence to virtue is a part of virtue. But if you were to have honor, the honor of a nation, if that nation is not built upon principles worth respecting, honoring, if your honor is built not on virtue, but on some man-made set of collections of mores that shift as the sands do on the dunes of the Egyptian peninsula, that is a problem. And that is where honoring your nation can be a problem. The beauty about America is our nation was built on virtue. So we can honor it as Christians, and we must honor those precepts, those principles. Cut number 9, Mr. Producer. The foundation of every government is some principle or passion in the minds of the people. The noblest principles and most generous affections in our nature, then, have the fairest chance to support the noblest and most generous models of government.
And that's something that could not have ever been said up to that point in time.
Correct.
Could not.
Correct. So that's where, again, you have to come at this from the perspective of this is a Christian speaking of moral virtue. These are settlers. We are not a nation of immigrants. We are a nation of settlers. There were people who came here who settled, and then folks immigrated. I'm all about immigration on some level, at some form. Maybe we could slow it down. Maybe we could stop it for a little while. Okay. I would be okay with stopping it for a little bit until we figure out what's actually going on and who all is in our nation. I think that might be a good idea. And then we can reconsider once we figure out the tens of millions of immigrants that are here. Then we figure out what to do with them and who they are. Some of them may be worth keeping, maybe not. If they came here illegally, we're offering that opportunity. However, getting back on point. Next cut, number 10, Mr. Producer. The principal difficulty lies, and the greatest care should be employed in constituting this representative assembly. It should be in miniature an exact portrait of the people at large. It should think, feel, reason, and act just like them. That it may be the interest of this, the assembly to do strict justice at all times. It should be an equal representation, or in other words, equal interest among the people should have an equal interest in it. Great care should be taken to this effect and to prevent unfair, partial, or corrupt elections. Such regulations, however, may be better made in times of greater tranquility than at present. They're in the middle of a Revolutionary War, and they will spring up of themselves naturally with all the powers of government come to be in the hands of the people's friends. So you see a couple things here. A, Adams is saying we need to make sure that we have a representation of all of the people, kind of a snapshot of the populace in a representative assembly, in a Republican representation assembly. In this case, he's really referring to what ultimately became Congress. Now, you can see that he's speaking to election models. He's speaking to freedom of certain people. There's a very big tension among the founding fathers was the issue of slavery. There are a lot of things that the founding fathers believed would have to shake out after the safety of the nation was secured. So that is something that you got to always remember. But I think, Charlie, you're sitting there, you're looking.
One of the thoughts that just went through my mind was this. How many of those in the early days of the founding of our country who had believed in slavery would have actually fought had they known what they would have to give up? And that's not the kind of person that you necessarily want. How do I want to word this? You don't want to build a country on those kind of people.
Well, and that's just the thing. We actually had to fight that, and that's
Yes.
why the Constitutional Convention almost broke multiple times over.
Yeah.
And so when you consider that in hand and you realize, okay, so we do have this terse debate going on amongst the founding fathers. That's something that a lot of modern historians want to gloss over and just say, oh, they were all slaveholders. No. There was a huge debate.
And that's the key phrase right there. You know, we think about the big, beautiful bill right now.
Yep.
And there's a lot of debate going on in back rooms and so on and so forth. And it's good debate. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing different about that than what's going on here.
Correct.
This obviously was foundational. And if there's one part you don't want to screw up, you don't want to screw up the foundation. If I'm setting the cement for my home to build on, I want that to be laid correctly. And this is no different. I love the wisdom of John Adams here. He's just an incredible thinker. And one of the other thoughts going through my mind earlier, the people that founded this country were incredible thinkers.
Yes.
They were incredible thinkers, and very thankful for it. You let me know if you want me to read some of these, because I know it's a lot of reading.
I know. So, Mr. Charlie, go ahead and get this next one for us.
Yeah, so a representation of the people in one assembly being obtained, a question arises whether all the powers of the government, legislative, executive, and judicial, shall be left in this body. I think a people cannot be long free, nor ever happy, whose government is in one assembly. My reasons for this opinion are as follows. Next cut, please. 1. A single assembly is liable to all the views, follies, and frailties of an individual, subject to fits of humor, starts of passion, flights of enthusiasm, partialities of prejudice, and consequently productive of hasty results and absurd judgments. And all these errors ought to be corrected and defects supplied by some controlling power. Next cut. Number 2, a single assembly is apt to be avaricious and in time will not scruple to exempt itself from burthens which it will lay without compunction on its constituents. Number 3, a single assembly is apt to grow ambitious and after a time will not hesitate to vote itself perpetual. This was one fault of the Long Parliament, but more remarkably of Holland, whose assembly first voted themselves from annual to septennial, then for life. And after a course of years, that all vacancies happening by death or otherwise should be filled by themselves without any application to constituents at all.
And this right here is the biggest concern that they had against a parliamentary system. And I actually want to speak this one, or I want to read this one comment that someone left. They said that no government should ever have unilateral authority against its people.
Oh, amen.
And that's where you have the checks and balances.
Yes.
And that's what we see getting screwed up today. So,
and can I just jump one thing here?
Yeah.
Folks, for those of you that really believe strongly in our form of government, and I do, Harry Reid broke a very vital rule in the Senate when he took off the 60-person majority.
Oh, I'm glad that he did it because the filibuster came from it came from the Democrats anyway.
Okay.
And Republicans have always bent over and allowed the Democrats to do whatever they wanted.
So with this, and here's how I would respond to that. That's not the way that it was originally designed.
Correct.
It was designed to force people to agree.
No, it was to slow down the civil rights movement. So that's
okay.
where it came. That's where it
Okay.
came from. It's where it came from, and then they want to cry when they broke it, and now
Oops.
people are talking about not.
Now they're not talking about not doing it.
Yeah, so I'm actually fine for it. I think we should start to ram stuff through on slim majorities because it's all we're getting because we've allowed way too much.
But do you see the beauty
chicanery.
with which he has thought this thing through?
John Adams? Yeah.
Oh,
John Adams.
it is
has-
incredible.
So he goes on to say, in defense of a Republican government, a representative assembly, although extremely well qualified and absolutely necessary as a branch of legislature, is unfit to exercise the executive power for want of two essential properties: secrecy and dispatch. Number 5, representative assembly is still less qualified for the judicial power because it is too numerous, too slow, and too little skilled in the laws. And then sixthly, because these are people who are all going to be members of the general public. 6, because a single assembly possessed of all the powers of the government would make arbitrary laws for their own interest, execute all laws arbitrarily for their own interest, and adjudge all controversies in their own favor.
And we're fighting that even with the form of government that we have.
Right now, we have an alignment of the parties, and there's one establishment party, and then there are the Mavericks.
Yes.
And the Mavericks, there's a diverse group of them. We have the Nancy Mabes and some of those people who are kind of interesting, and then we have the Trumps who are true Mavericks, and then we got people like Rand Paul who won't agree with anyone at any time because he's got good ideas, but he'll never find his tribe. Yes,
But
Steve.
Yeah, you
Go
see this with the Second Amendment stuff, especially with when they're trying to pass Second Amendment things that are towards the Second Amendment, and then you end up having like 20 rhinos end up voting against it.
Yep.
You
And
know,
I
when they're
think about
talking about
Democrats having
saying
their
they're
own-
for it, and then they vote against it.
Yep.
AOC, Ilhan Omar. They're out there.
Correct.
Jasmine Crockett is
Out there.
out there.
And you notice how Trump has kind of named her as the next successor? He's really hoping that Vance or Hegseth or whoever's next
David Hogue
is going to
named her.
that.
Yep.
And David Hogg has also done that too.
Yep.
So I hope they do. I hope make my day.
Mine too.
Just make
would
my
be
day.
neat.
That'd be fantastic. Jasmine Crockett would be a fun one to go up against. The only problem is that side of the aisle will get dumber. As if they're represented underneath that, they're all going to fall underneath the same intelligence level. I'm afraid. So I totally agree.
It'll just completely keep dropping.
Yeah.
And more people will get blue and purple hair.
Hopefully people see the difference
They'll
and they
be
make
more
a
identifiable.
well, anyway. But shall the whole power of the legislation rest in one assembly? Most of the foregoing reasons apply equally to prove that the legislative power ought to be more complex, to which we may add that if the legislative power is wholly in one assembly, the executive is in another or in a single person, these two powers will oppose and venerate upon each other until the contest shall end in war, and the whole power, legislative and executive, be usurped by the strongest. So we need not only a judicial, but we also need something special for the executive. We'll get into that. Next slide, Mr. Producer. The judicial power in such case could not mediate or hold the balance between these two contending powers because the legislative would undermine it. Laws be written so that the judicial could not enforce. And this shows the necessity, too, of giving the executive power a negative upon the legislative. Otherwise, this will be continually encroaching upon that. He's referring to veto. This is why we have the presidential veto, because if we do not have a presidential veto, then we have an issue of legislation being passed that will slowly ebb away the power of the executive. Then we'll have this legislative body elect themselves or appoint themselves to lifetime appointments. Sound familiar?
Checks.
Balances.
That's what it's about. Because even on a veto, you can still make it law, but when you do, it better show that everybody's for everybody in quotes. What is it? 2/3?
Yeah.
Is it 2/3 or 3/4? I think it's 2/3.
Yep.
Seems
So
like,
that's pretty big.
seems like there's more checks being written than there is balances.
Well,
happening.
that's right now. You have these lower courts who have no authority to interfere with the executive, continually doing that. I agree, and that's what we're seeing right now. So laws need to be put in place that the judicial can't do certain things. They can't just write these opinions and prevent the president from being able to deport alien invaders. So continuing on, this is number 20, Mr. Producer. To avoid these dangers, let a distant assembly, this is where things have broken down a bit, be constituted as a mediator between the two extreme branches of the legislature, that which represents the people and that which is vested with executive power. Let this representative assembly then elect by ballot from among themselves and by the constituents, or both, a distinct assembly, which for the sake of the perspicuity, we will call, there we go, got it, perspicuity, we will call a council. It may well consist in any number you please, say 20 or 30, and should have a free and independent exercise of its judgment and consequently a negative voice in the legislature. This is kind of sort of what became the Senate. It's not exactly what he voiced, but what you had was a secondary bicameral legislature body created with a Senate that was elected from the representatives of the House. What this did was it gave the states each 2 senators their own sovereignty and their ability to write laws that were in the favor of the states, so that New York could not encroach upon Wyoming, right? So that there would be some check and balance in between the states and the more populous states against the more sparsely populated states. So all of that in total is really kind of the thought process and paradigm that I think, honestly, we're lacking today. And there's a reason why we're lacking it, but we'll get to it in a minute. We're going to continue a little bit further on with John Adams, number 21, Mr. Producer. Let the representative assembly then elect by ballot from among themselves or the constituents, or both, a distinct assembly, which for the sake of perspicuity, I think I read that twice.
Yeah.
Let's do that 22. Let's do that 22. Thank you, Mr. Producer. My mistake. These two bodies, thus constituted and made integral parts of the legislature, let them unite and by joint ballot choose a governor who, again, he's talking about the local state government in this case, who, after being stripped of most of those badges of domination called prerogatives, should have a free and independent exercise of his judgment and be also made an integral part of the legislature. Now, this was his model for a state. During the War of 1776, the Revolution, this was his idea of what a model state would look like. And you kind of see the inkling of a Senate and a Congress. You have the executive branch and the governorship. And of course, you also have a judicial branch. Now, unfortunately, those of you who are listening, a lot of y'all will be familiar with the 17th Amendment. And I do think that it is a sad state of affairs that we are here today. But let's go ahead and read this. This is from Senate.gov on the origins of the Senate. So, Mr. Brewster, go ahead and pull that cut up, B23. Following the Civil War, disputes among state legislators over the Senate elections resulted in a number of deadlocks, leaving some Senate seats vacant for long periods of time. The Delaware legislature reached a stalemate in 1895, taking 217 ballots over a period of 114 days. Delaware remained without representation in the U.S. Senate for 2 years. In light of such problems, reformers in many states began calling for a change in the system. In Oregon, for example, a number of the measures were enacted in the 20th century, allowing voters to express their choice for senator. Other states followed this quote-unquote Oregon plan and instituted their own versions of election reform. You good there, Steve?
Yeah, got tickle in my throat.
Yeah, tickle. The problem is I would say it's an election regression. It's not an election reform when you take the Senate and you give it to popular vote, because really what you do is you dilute the purpose. Mm-hmm. You dilute the purpose of the Senate, which is, I think, is a net negative. And we've seen the country kind of change, I believe, in ways that are unfortunate since then. Mr. Producer, cut 24. A turning point came in 1906 when publisher William Randolph Hearst, a proponent of direct election for the Senate, hired novelist David Graham Phillips to write a number of articles on the subject. Published in Cosmopolitan magazine in 1906, Phillips' series, The Treason of the Senate, offered an unsympathetic and largely fictionalized account of senators as pawns of industrialists and financiers. The articles further galvanized public support for reform of the Senate.
And I just cringe at Hearst. Sorry.
Well, think about it.
Just cringe.
It's you create this fake. It's like the new documentary on Netflix. They call it a documentary. It's a series, Adolescence, where they say, you see, you have this white kid and he's 13 years old. He stabbed this girl to death because he was, was spurned by her. And, she didn't accept his love advances. You see, we have a real problem with toxic masculinity. What do you mean this white kid? Every kid, almost every girl who's stabbed to death in the UK right now does not look like that white boy. I'm just going to say it right there. He does not. We have a race swap going on here. By and large, you look at the statistics, it is not a white little boy doing that. One with two parents in the home. And they specifically said in Adolescence, the founders and the creators they said we wanted to specifically drive home that it could be your kid, even though you're two loving parents, you've done everything right. Sorry, two parents in the home almost guarantees, statistically almost guarantees you're not going to have that problem. Nowhere near on the same statistical likelihood that if you have one parent in the home, or if you have a troubled past, if parents haven't stayed together. That is the single largest prescriptor or descriptor of those who are above the poverty line is children who had two parents throughout their childhood.
You're nailing the very point that I was trying to make with Hearst. It's the same thing. It's the same thing where they make this false story about senators who don't exist, and they do it to create a political change. We're seeing it happen today. Oh, in a major way.
In a major way.
Because when you look at mainstream media, that's why the media environment has changed so much. And I don't think it's a bad thing. Quite honestly, I think more truth is coming out as a result.
I hope so.
And there's more untruth. There's some of that too. But when you take a look at how often things are being narrated with the slant for, I'm going to say, the producers or owners of media networks.
Correct.
That's a problem.
Correct.
And what is William Hearst? I mean, just do a read over on him and you will see there's just some stuff that you just cannot trust coming out of him.
Correct.
So folks, I think the biggest takeaway from this piece here at the end is get your facts. John Adams had it. He nailed it. And what he articulated, a lot of it was implemented. Should we have a Senate? Okay, we can all debate that. I think that's a worthy debate. But the framework of how government should work, he nailed.
And our nation ran really well. And
yes.
I would argue it was in that time frame. It was in the 19 teens where we really started to get off the rails with the 17th Amendment,
yes.
where we took away we started the income tax. We allowed the Fed to come in.
Yep.
And if you want to read an interesting book, The Monster of Jekyll Island, Jekyll Island in 1913, I believe is the exact date where they met. And that's where you have the Rockefeller, Rothschild banking institutions and all of the thoughts for civilization forming and social, what's the right word? Creation, management, and just control.
You know what it really reminds me of? Babylon. The coming together, thinking we can do this. We can ascend
without God
to the Most High without Him.
Without God and against God.
And I'm sorry, I agree. I diverted there, but
no, I don't think you're wrong though.
I just want to really emphasize here for us as we've been looking at these documents. A lot of people Satan especially, will co-opt and swap, and he'll change, and he'll make you think. He'll tell you that the electoral college is not needed, that it's wrong, that it needs to be eliminated. Friends, let me tell you something that is absolutely unequivocally wrong. So many of our people would not be represented appropriately in this country because there was no electoral college. We need the electoral college.
Correct. 100%
Absolutely do.
agree.
Yep.
100%.
And I'm just giving one example there.
So all of that to say, the more things change, the more they stay
The same. That's
The
right.
more things change, the more they stay the same. And things are definitely, unfortunately, still moving. And we're kind of seeing that cultural shift with the Marxist revolution.
Yes.
And unfortunately, some of the useful idiots in this new Marxist revolution have earned themselves a whole new term in the cultural lexicon. And unfortunately, the right is buying into this. There are folks on the right who are starting to use this term. It is a term that I do not believe we as Christians, as conservatives, should ever be caught using. But it is a term that I've heard over and over again the last 2 weeks.
And maybe we should just hold up for just a moment. Folks, anytime that the left is introducing a new phrase, you should automatically back up and
look
tell
at
them
it.
to define it.
Try to understand what that phrase means. Why are you using those words?
Because many times all they have done is they have taken the same worn out old idea
And
putting a new
repackaged
coat of paint on it and said, here, look at this,
Here,
And give it a new definition.
and give it a new definition.
we're in a war of ideas. Let me choose your weapon of choice.
Yeah.
And okay, so if you haven't figured out the one that I'm talking about, I am talking about the phrase black fatigue. I dislike this term with a passion, but there is something people are very fatigued with. And I agree, there is an issue here. But to explain this, I want to use this clip from a lady on YouTube. She calls herself the Dadvocate. And you're gonna have a little bit of whiplash here because I'm gonna use this to explain what I think is the root cause of black fatigue. And it'll take a minute, but if you bear with me, I promise we are going to try to cook here. We are going to go somewhere. Mr. Producer, throw up that clip from the Dadvocate, please. Cut 25.
So Brett Fairley, who went viral for his insane paternity fraud story recently, was just arrested and made to take down all of his videos. It's a lot, but I'll give you the quick breakdown. So Brett is a young man who ends up getting approached by an older woman named Maria who asks him to be her sperm donor. She convinces him with paperwork and everything that it's all on the up and up. He's not going to be legally responsible for this child. Despite this arrangement and them only having a one-night stand to complete this arrangement, Maria ends up finding Brett's mom and grandma and tells them that she's pregnant with Brett's child and convinces them that he should be involved with the pregnancy. His mom and grandma now want to be a part of the baby's life, so they convince Brett that he should be too. So he agrees to start paying child support. But after a little over a year, having paid now $55,000 to this woman for this baby, he ends up taking a paternity test and finds out the baby isn't even his. Not only that, but Brett finds out that Maria likely knew who the real father was this entire time, but refused to disclose it because the real father was married to another woman at the time. Oops. So Brett goes to court for paternity fraud, asking for his name to be taken off the birth certificate, child support to end, and to be paid back for all the child support he did pay. In a kind of surprising victory, the courts actually do agree to end Brett's parental and child support obligations, but they don't make Maria pay him back, and I'm pretty sure his name is still on the birth certificate. The judge also assigns a mutual restraining order for the both of them, meaning that neither of them can ever talk about this case again. But according to Brett, Maria broke this order almost immediately by contacting his family, telling them that he's a deadbeat who abandoned his child. So Brett decides that he too is going to defy the order and clear his name. And that's when he made a multi-part series detailing all the lies, how he got his own mistakes along the way to help educate other men. I actually remember one interview where Brett was asked what he would tell his younger self if he could, and he said that if he had ever heard a story even remotely similar to what he went through, he would have never been in that situation. So his story does have the ability to prevent this from happening. But obviously the courts don't want this story out there. Why? It just makes you wonder, especially when you consider that in other countries like France, it's actually illegal for men to perform paternity tests on their kids without the mother's permission because, in their words, it would destabilize the community. And honestly, this whole concept that you have to prove paternity fraud is also crazy to me because it's like, did she say the kid was his? Did the DNA test say that it isn't? Seems to me that there was pretty clear deception involved. But we do have to learn from this, and honestly, this is why a lot of guys are very hesitant to sign anything until they get that DNA test. This is also why I think it's really important for women to stop taking DNA tests so personally and making it this big relationship-ending deal. You should want to be able to offer your man that reassurance, and you should also want that reassurance yourself. After all, hospital switch-ups do happen to women too. They can shut him up, but they can't shut us all up, and men need to hear this stuff. Men deserve to know if their kid is theirs or not without being shamed for wanting to know that.
So why am I using this to describe black fatigue? You'll understand why in just a couple of minutes, but I want to ask the question, what happened here and why are we here? Real quick, I'm going to articulate this. We have a woman who wants a child and she's not married. She wants a child. She wants to start a family without starting a family. Disordered issue number one. She then sets up a one-night stand with a man who makes the mistake of the Proverbs 5 and Proverbs 7 man and has a one-night stand. Number two, on the board against this situation. Number three, this woman lies and says, your son's a deadbeat. Who does mom and the family believe? The woman. Why? Believe all women.
Always.
Disorder number three. Do you guys see? Do you guys see why I'm bringing this up? And why do we treat certain women this way? Why do we allow this in our culture? It's because of feminism. Because in feminism, at its root and at its branch, is really born out of Marxist Enlightenment theory. It's built out of critical theory. It comes out of the patriarchy being the oppressors and women being the oppressed. Therefore, women are allowed certain things. Are you starting to understand where I'm going with this and why I'm bringing this out here? Are men tired of this? Men going their own way. You have the Andrew Tates of this world becoming popular. Why are they becoming popular? It's in a response to women like this person who said to a man, all I want is I want a kid from you and all good. Well, now I want child support. Well, now I want, by the way, I didn't even list off all the problems with the story. You can keep going. We could spend the rest of this hour talking about it.
Well, adultery. She was married.
Just keep going down the list. It is not good.
Yeah.
I mean,
Charlie, your thoughts?
Well, again, there was a lot to unpack there. I think for him, he should have never been in that situation anyway. But
it's his own doing.
But the point that you're making is spot on right. It's a form of canceling. It's a form of that Marxist way. And guys, when we look at some of our leaders in the legislative branches and we listen to how they articulate things, they are articulating those things based on a quote unquote woke or canceled culture. That is not a way to build your culture or maintain it.
And it's going to fail.
It will fail. It will ultimately fail at its end.
Yeah, we've got so-called leaders that are not. Now, let me rephrase it. When you have leaders are supposed to be people that you follow.
Yeah.
The definition of leaders. We have so-called leaders in government. Now, are these people that you want to follow?
Yeah. There's a
Are
lack
they?
of morality.
Not really. I mean, what do they do? Steal government money. How many of them are adulterers? How many of them are, I mean, we can name go through all of the biblical acts that and they're not leaders. There probably are some that we could consider leaders, but probably the majority, not
So
really.
you're looking at a culture that is sick, but you're also looking at we're doing fine on time, Mr. Producer. Thank you. You're right, but we have a culture that's primarily focused on hedonism and self.
Yes.
And the promise is that you can focus on yourself. The promise is that you don't have to do your duty as a man. You can just enjoy this one night stand, and you're empowering a woman, and the woman is allowed to do this, that, and the other. The problem is it destroys society. And it destroys the very society that you're enjoying that isn't a hunter-gatherer food society. You have this incredible lack of duty. You have this incredible lack of responsibility. And so there are a lot of men out there who have coined themselves men going their own way, MGTOW. There are men out there who have become very chauvinistic, like the Andrew Tates of this world. That is not the response to this. The response to this is biblical literacy. The response to this is biblical observance. The response to this is godliness, not more godlessness.
Correct.
Because these people, this woman is a victim in a way of the secular Marxist revolution, of the cultural Marxism that we're seeing, this idea of you're going to create class, gender, race warfare and destroy the institutions that have built the West. They have been doing this for years, and our children are just caught in the crossfire. They are caught in the crossfire. And women who are doing this, they're guilty. I'm not saying that they're not, but they too are ultimately going to be what's the word? I just used it. The foolish victims of their own demise. They're the Marxist useful idiots.
Yep.
Useful idiots. They too are the useful idiots. And if you watched, if you look at the Bolshevik Revolution, the useful idiots at the end were killed. It's the same thing with those in the African American community who are given a pass. And people who would normally not do these things, they are allowed to do these things and never punished. And what happens? They have children. And then they raise their children that way too. And so instead of dealing with the issue from a biblical perspective, some conservatives out there are using the word black fatigue. Don't do that. You just chose the weapon that was handed to you in a
And it's going to get used against
duel, and it is going to get you. It's going to bite you. It is not a good tool. It's not a good word. I don't like it. Charlie.
We did that segment last week. It took 50 plus years for us to figure out that a 2-parent home is the ultimate way to go.
Because
And
we
if
watched
you
the
don't-
downturn.
Hello? I mean,
So
Isn't it sad that it took 50 years to figure that out?
and
That's it.
there was a lot of preachers at that time. I don't think we understand the devastation of Lyndon B. Johnson.
I totally am with you.
I don't
agree.
think
One of the
we
worst.
understand it. And by the way, for those of you that are listening, if you are black today and you don't know this is something you should know. You should read what he said about black people.
when passing the Greater Cities Act and when passing the new welfare state, his words were, I will have those N-words voting for us for the next 100 years. And his objective was to break down the nuclear family.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And you know what? I love it when black people can see through that kind of thing. And
Speaking
why
of
are
which-
more hang tight one more second. And the reason that a lot more black people are not going the way of Trump is because they don't know that history.
And I think it would do them well. But there are people who have spoken out about this.
Amen.
Mr. Producer, if you can get our next cut. Aaron Magruder, the
Black people have always had a certain
They
amount
don't
of moral
teach it on
currency
purpose.
that we have been using. And let me be the first to tell you, that's used up. White America has been watching us act like fools for a long enough time where any sympathy they may have had to our plight is completely gone. You're approaching a country that forget hating black people or not hating black people, they just don't care. You can be talking about affirmative action, they can be like, I don't care. It literally is of no importance to me. I don't care about slavery. I don't care about segregation. I don't care about you. I don't care how many of you all go to jail. I don't care at all, because I'm broke. You can't be the proud, noble fighter when every single time someone sees a person that looks like you on television, they're acting like a damn fool. How would they know? How would they know you're not a damn fool?
So that's Aaron
Black
Magruder.
people have always had a certain amount of...
Yeah, I wasn't ready, but that's okay. Aaron Magruder is the creator of The Boondocks. And if you've watched that show, God bless you. It was hard for me to watch. I couldn't watch much of it, but the clips are funny.
Winston was literally telling me not to watch this like yesterday.
It is one of the most vile, racially charged, but Aaron Magruder, the guy who created that, he said, look, and this is in 2003 or 2002 when he said this. He said, look, people are running out of patience and you need to, but here's the thing that I think Magruder missed. He was right, but I think what he's missing is this is calculated. This is intentional, and this is to set us against each other. And once you have a culture that is built on this and it's grown and it's been allowed to inculcate, you have children of children who've been excused in this bigotry of, soft bigotry of low expectations, to the point where this is now normal behavior. I want you to pull up this next clip, Mr. Producer. This is from X. This young man had some commentary, and I actually wanted to pull this up. I think this is a perfect encapsulation of black fatigue.
Stop fucking running from me.
This is in a
Guess the
restaurant.
race of the person who did that. I'll tell you, they were black. Of course they were. And this is why I don't even like to be around my own people. If I was that person in the other booth that got rants all over me, bro, I would have been so mad. Because why are you even doing that? And the person who did it in the comments was defending their actions, talking about it's funny, it's a joke. You're weird. You're weird, bro. Honestly, please be racist towards black people. Maybe that's going to help them stop being like this. Because there's no saving the black community at this point. They're loud, obnoxious, irritating, rude, ghetto. I don't like to be around them. They have more cons than pros. So yeah, hopefully black people can stop acting like this. Because them acting like this impacts me. Because people are going to automatically think I act like this. Because that's how racial profiling happens. I blame the people who act like this, not the people who racially profile me. Because if they didn't act like this, I wouldn't be getting racially profiled.
That right there, and I wish Chauncey were here today. Friend of the show, he's been on many times. Chauncey would absolutely agree with that. And he would add, I think he would add, again, let's start to look at the world view and the beliefs of these people.
That was heartbreaking.
It's not something that you want to see. And again, by the way, it's one of those things too. It's where I also have, look, I'm blonde haired, blue eyes. There are things I don't do because I do not want to be connoted with anyone of like the Aryan Brotherhood. Some people say you should shave your head. That's a weird thing, but they say that it's, faster or whatever. For me, no, thank you. No, thank you. You know why? Because I don't want to be anywhere near associated with that.
Some of us don't have a choice.
Some of us don't have a choice, but also you're not really an Aryan. You're more British German, right?
Yeah, British
German. See, I actually come from Aryan stock, and so I would rather.
Well, time to cancel the show.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Exactly.
Well,
but no, there are things that I would not do because I would not want to be associated with that. And right, so it's and you're seeing that same dread. I felt that as a kid. I was told that you look just like a Hitler Youth. Thank you, dude. Telling a 4-year-old that is kind of a quick way to screw up a kid. But all of that to say, that tension needs to be detensioned, and it's a great time when some people say black fatigue. By the way, I'm actually thankful for the phrase because it gives us a time to talk about it and say, what do you mean by that? Do you mean those who fall into the Marxist cultural revolution and those who think that it's cool to cavort about with those ideas and they think they get a pass because the end times are near? It's a great gift. I'm able to actually get people's attention. They say, what? Right? It's a moment to grab people's attention but no, you won't find me using that term unironically or without explaining it.
If I could say one thing to that young lady there that articulated that,
Young man.
Sorry, I didn't
man.
have my glasses
Kiddo.
on. Sorry.
That kiddo.
Yep.
Young.
I would say this. I hear you, and I want you to understand something. Not everybody will look at you that way. I won't. I expect you to act appropriately and behave appropriately, because I know there's many good black people out there that are raising families that are absolutely great for this country. So I want you to understand that's not who defines you.
And even just saying that is kind of like falling into the programming. It's like, it does not matter.
Right.
Race does not matter. I was raised in a post-racial America in the 1990s. These evil Marxists took that away.
Yep.
I remember growing up in a post-racial America. I was in a majority minority school. I only say that now looking back upon the realization of, oh my gosh, that was a majority minority school. We didn't care. We did not care. It's all programming, and using some of these phrases. Be careful the phrases you use. That's what I'm saying.
And that was what you said earlier. Black fatigue is nothing more than programming language. That's all it is.
Tim Mull says, I've never heard that term before. If you're on X long enough, you'll hear it. Folks like Elijah Schaefer from Slightly Offensive used to actually kind of think he, kind of like the cut of his jib. And then he kind of came out with the white identitarian side of things. It's like, guys, it is okay to be white.
Yep.
It is okay to be white. But I'll also say it's probably not great to start to identify with that over your virtues and your morals, because that's where you start to say, okay, you're kind of coming into the left wing of the Enlightenment.
Yep.
It's a fail.
Yep.
Steve.
You grew up during the post-racial times. I grew up during the racial times in the South, man.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. And the town I grew up in was all white. I mean, and it was.
And that area
man.
still
It's
has tensions.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It still does. And I mean, we were like a hop, skip, and a jump away from Vider. I mean, everybody knows about Vider. I mean, come on.
So all that to say, make sure that we're basing what we say and what we do on first principles. And again, the thing that just kills me is you saw that whole kerfuffle with the basketball this
Awful.
last week.
I hate it with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And no, it's not good for the game of basketball. I was listening. I like hockey. And if I could just divert here for just a moment, I like hockey. I love hockey. And I was listening to this group last night, and I won't say who it was, but he was talking about the fights and, you need to go after their best players and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you need to shut up. You really need to shut up. And here's why. Because when we watch something like sports, we want to see the best. Mm-hmm. I want to see Connor McDavid on the ice. Why? Because Connor McDavid is really skilled. Would I want to see a PK Subban? Absolutely. He was skilled too. Now, he did some nasty stuff when he was playing hockey, but he did it in the culture of when they were playing. Mm-hmm. And that's my point. I want to see PK Subban, not because he can fight. If I want to see that, I'll go to the boxing matches.
Yep.
I don't want to see that. I want to see skilled players on the hockey rink. I want to see skilled basketball players on the basketball floor. If Angel Reese is good, then let Angel Reese play. If Caitlin Clark is good, then let Caitlin Clark play. But don't get involved in this fighting stuff because we're black and white. It's crazy.
And it's absolutely exhausting.
It is.
And people say, well, because it's all because Angel is black. No. Watch the whole video. They were both.
Caitlin Clark can be
she was
rough.
fouled. Caitlin was fouled first.
Yes.
And then Caitlin on the same play moved in harder after she got fouled, didn't get called on Caitlin, got called on Angel. I don't even care about basketball, and you guys are making me, the mainstream media is making me go and do research. Caitlin was fouled, white. Angel, black. Caitlin came in stronger, just trying to get the ball, got called a foul on Angel, and then everyone said, oh, you're making excuses for Caitlin because she's white. No, because they were players, and one of them clearly fouled the other one before, and they're both being rough. Penalty box them for 5 minutes and then be over with it.
And the only reason they got that is
said.
because of the history.
Well, look what she said. She goes, hey, I'd rather have her be at the free throw line than going for 2 points.
I would.
Yep.
She's a poor free throw shooter.
Yeah. Fowler.
Yeah.
Best off to Fowler instead of her going for 2 here and possibly for sure make it. I'd rather put her at the free throw line.
This all goes to the exact point that you're trying to make. This stuff that we're talking about is exhausting. It's stupid. And it's based in an ideology that has no place in our society. It's not going to do anything good for it. And we've got to learn to step up and say, hush it up.
It's
just dumb.
Yeah.
Is. Call it out for when you see it, because again, it's all part of the same reindeer games. They're playing programming language, and if we're not careful, we will fall into it. And I think it's bad for the culture. It's bad for us. So
I would have wanted to see a Magic Johnson on the floor. Yeah. I would have wanted to see an Orlando Woolridge on the floor. I would have wanted to see a Byron Scott on the floor. Why?
Notice how you haven't said any female athletes yet. Because
but you know what I did give you? I gave you three really good black athletes.
Because there's like 2 women in the world who can dunk, Mr. Producer. There's like 2 women who can actually dunk on the regular. I'm sorry. Love women. Love watching them do a lot of things, like ice skating.
They cannot do
figure skating.
They cannot do what a man can do.
I love watching some of the more articulate, muscular. If I'm watching muscle memory related sports, there are some really amazing women that just outshine men.
Yep.
But when it comes to raw strength, I'm not generally a sports watcher, but I find women's. I can't even look. It's like, okay,
I'm with you.
Good. I mean, again, don't get me wrong. But if women think it's so important, maybe they should go watch it themselves.
Exactly.
Instead of complaining about it. But again, that's the whole purpose of this conversation. They're dividing us over the issue of gender, over the issue of race, over the issue of class. And that's their objective. And if they can do that, they can destroy the foundations. So that's really where we need to get away from. Yeah. Now, on to something a little bit more fun. We have a new segment, and it's called Steve's Shenanigans.
Oh, boy.
So, before we get there, I forgot. We had one more thing to cover. Sorry
about that.
This is my fault. Oh. We're going to get to Steve's Shenanigans in just a minute. But I actually did want to cover this. Mr. Producer jogged my memory. Trump actually had a meeting with the White House, at the White House with the president of South Africa. Guys, my computer's acting up, so I don't have my map in front of me, so I'm now going by rote. So thank you for correcting me, Mr. Producer.
You're doing good, then.
My pleasure.
Yeah, just try to remember all the cuts. If you had your head under a rock, you might have missed this. But Mr. Producer, go ahead and play the first part of this. I'll tell you when to stop.
Was that a question or a statement?
I hate that about the media.
You never changed.
Mr. President, what would it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Oh, shut up.
Well, I can answer that for President.
And you shut up.
For him, no, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. It will be.
Our president will respond to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us on the quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them.
Context of this is amazing. Look at Trump's face.
Repeating what I've been saying.
He's waiting.
I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these 3 gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective.
So what Trump does,
is the answer to your question.
If you missed it, thank you, Mr. Producer.
Mr. President, I must.
what he does, he says, okay, let me play a little video for you. And Mr. Bruce is going to pull up the next cut. And this is some of what you heard. I'm not going to play the whole video. Video in our description at Further Every Day on YouTube, Rumble, or anywhere podcasts can be found. But for now, Mr. Producer, go ahead and play that clip.
Yes, must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot, kill.
Look at him, look.
That's the face of the kid. It has his hand broken with his fingers in the cookie jar.
Boy.
So
he's not happy.
This sucked for him. So thank you, Mr. Producer. And this, I think, was this is a sign of wisdom. This is a sign of wisdom on Donald Trump's part. This is an ambush, and Tim Mole says this in the comment section here. I can't believe he actually did this. Like this took cojones. This took cojones to do. I think this was awesome.
This is typical Trump.
This is typical Trump.
This is just like Trump to do.
And this is fantastic. So for those of you who don't know the video, again, link in the description below, on Further Every Day at Rumble, YouTube, anywhere podcasts are found. This is the video of one of the majority. This president goes on to say, this lying sack of human refuse goes on to say, well, it's not a majority party. It's a minority. They're one of the larger parties in South Africa. This is very common. And so they lie and they lie. And speaking of those who lie, next cut, Mr. Producer, pick out the lie that's being told when this reporter asked this question. Go ahead. This is when the video ends.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about?
Who are you?
What are you talking about? You know, you gotta get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing. They also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible, the way you run that network. And you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead.
No more questions from you. I thank you, Mr. Producer. I love that response from Donald Trump. But the problem is, do you understand what that reporter was doing?
Yeah, I wouldn't have responded to the question.
He was specifically derailing the moment where Trump was going to follow up and say, so you mean those people? And by the way, watch the whole video if you haven't already. Trump goes, and those right there, those are the crosses of all the dead white South African farmers. And the president goes, oh, did they tell you what this is? Like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he is that ignorant of what's going on in his own country. But then you see, later on that week, Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, and I don't have this clip ready, she was asked, well, actually, you see how not all the farmers were buried there. They weren't all represented. But and Carolyn Leavitt goes, well, what's not in dispute is that those crosses represent bodies of white African farmers. For each one of those, there's a white African farmer who's been killed in this white genocide. And the reporter just kept going on and on and on. Do you see the lie? Do you see the lie that's being perpetrated by our media?
By our media, where people need to think. We've got to stop taking what NBC, ABC, CBS means, Fox. You got to stop taking what they say as truth. It's not. You've got to do your own research and your own analytical thinking. Do you honestly think that people over there don't know what genocide is? Do you honestly think that a government that is complicit in genocide would actually allow that to be spoken? Look at the uncomfortableness of the South African president.
Yeah, you can tell.
I mean, he is wanting to get out of the room.
You can tell, and good.
Yes.
He should feel that way. It's happening under his watch.
If I were a person, a political figure in this world, I don't care where it would be, and you were invited to the White House, that is a great moment to just take great pause and go, do I really want to go there?
Yep.
Because you're fixing to encounter a person that has no problem embarrassing you, not just in the U.S., but in the
global
world
stage. And he did.
And he did.
He absolutely embarrassed that president. I hope.
He should be ashamed.
That these people start to be held accountable.
Yes.
And again, this is what happens when you don't hold people accountable. And again, it's not time to talk about black fatigue. It's time to talk about this is what your Marxist revolutions end up looking like.
Yes, it is.
This is what they look like. This is what overthrowing a government looks like. And then when it's not treated properly, look, apartheid bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Noted. But when you replace apartheid with another government that is based on what? Fear.
Yep.
Calling back to the beginning, top of the hour, fear. That is where you end up with this situation with white genocide in South Africa. It is not a good thing.
That is a great link right there.
So
great link.
That is our scenario. That is what we're covering today. Sorry, guys, having a little bit of an issue here with the computer. That's why I was a little bit off. Now, with that, we're off to Steve Shenanigans. Now, Steve got us a list of 15, and I didn't have a chance to talk about this before, but I actually fact-checked these. 15 laws that are supposedly still in the books in Texas. Some of these are not real.
So let's see.
I prepared a game in chat. I want you guys to join us in this game. You can chat live with us on Sundays, 1 to 3 Central Standard Time, God's time zone, on DLive, Vaughn, or Rumble under PSB on that channel. Guys, true or false? This is a former Texas law that is still on the book. So starting off,
that
Steve
are
Shenanigans.
not. Some were at the time were on the books, but
yes, that's a shotgun noise, Mr. Producer. He was looking at me like, what was that? It's supposed to be shotgun racking. So in Texas, there are still some strange laws supposedly on the books. Some of these are fake.
Let's find them.
And let's see which ones are. Now,
so
here is the listing.
First off,
no
selling your organs.
You are not allowed to sell your organs, but you are allowed to donate your organs.
Yep.
And I believe that's still on the books.
But you can sell your hair and your blood.
Why? Because you can reproduce it.
Because you can reproduce it, and because it's not.
All right.
You're missing a Mr. Producer.
Got
all right.
Here, but I'm not planning on selling it anytime
He's petting
soon.
his hair.
Took me a long while to
missing it all.
So, and it is a Class A misdemeanor if you're caught selling organs, and a fine up to $4,000 and a year in jail.
And I'm perfectly fine with that.
Steve, go ahead and pull this up on the show map because you're going to need it from there because some of these are different. So,
got it?
Yep, pull it up on the show map. Trust me.
What?
Trust me.
Oh.
Trust me.
Pull up the show map.
True or false? Do you think it's true, Mr. Producer? Do you think it's true or false? You're not allowed to sell your own organs.
What was it sell or donate?
Sell. You can donate, but you cannot.
But you cannot sell. Someone's saying false in the comments section.
Ooh.
Okay.
True.
You're going to say it's true.
I'm saying
Charlie,
true.
I say true. Steve?
I say true.
Okay.
Let's
Go ahead
see
and
it.
see. It's true. Ding, ding, ding.
What do I win?
Is
An iPad?
No, you don't win an iPad.
Dang, why am I even here?
That's a good
The person
question.
that guessed false on the thing is donating an iPad.
So that's a worthy guess. I actually would have thought when I was fact checking these, I would have thought that these would have been false, but it is actually true. You are not allowed to sell your own organs. I think it is partly in regards to also preventing organ trafficking.
Exactly. That's
you
exactly
can't
what it is.
You can't go sell your kidney because there's a question of how many of those kidneys were willingly obtained.
Yep.
And so
that's
right,
an
there's
issue
problem.
with China.
And that's
Absolutely.
exactly, and that's what's
China.
going on over there from
China.
what we hear.
So, Mr. Producer, next one. Oh, so they donated an ice cream.
Oh.
So
All
I like
right.
that.
Oh, all right.
To PSP.
Cool. Now, here's number 2.
Yep.
Not allowed to go barefoot in public. How do you like that? It is illegal to go barefoot without a permit.
Okay.
In
True
order to
or false?
comply with the sanitation law, you have to buy a permit for $5. Then you're a sanitary if you have your $5 permit and you are barefoot. You're sanitary then with your $5 permit.
So I got false from
Okay.
Nebula 7, Alan 101T, Tim Mold, true. What do you think? True or false?
I'm going true, and I'll tell you why. It's a form of revenue.
Okay, Steve, true
I'll
or false?
say true.
Mr. Producer,
True.
turn it over. Let's see what it is. Oh, you see, it turns out this was a
False one.
This was false. This was a common myth that was perpetuated, and it turns out that it is not a. There was
I
a,
can see some.
you can
some
see
city
someone doing it. You can see someone doing it
that for $5.
for $5. Get a permit.
Get a permit. Now you're sanitary.
I've been cited for
Next one,
barefooting.
Mr. Producer.
So
We got to keep moving.
no drinking while standing.
What?
You got to sit down and
Excuse
drink.
me?
It is illegal to take more than 3 drinks.
So
That
true or
means,
false?
I guess, for
While standing.
towns that are like heavy consumers in towns, so that when you're like been drinking a lot, they want
Yeah.
you to sit down instead of fall down,
I'm going false.
so that
Saying
you're
false.
not laying on the ground.
What do you say, Mr. Producer?
I'll say false.
What do you say, Steve?
I say true.
Turn it over.
Okay.
It's true.
Hey, you people coming to Texas?
What did I tell you?
It's true.
Huh?
Okay.
I'm awful at this game.
Okay. So
That
yeah.
doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me one
Next
bit.
one, Mr. Producer. Go ahead, Steve.
All right. Now this one's good.
I'm sorry.
Don't eat your neighbor's garbage.
Without
You
permission.
can't be a garbage panda.
No
Okay?
garbage panda eating.
No garbage panda eating.
I'm
It's
going.
against the law to go next door, even when you've had more than 3 sips.
I'm going
Okay.
three.
Okay.
Are you saying true?
So,
True.
Mr. Producer, true or false?
True.
Steve, true or false?
true.
Mr. Producer, hit it.
Oh, there we go.
It's true. Those are in the comment section. You're right. And here's why. Someone actually wrote this into law as an additional indictment for trespassing.
I
I believe that.
And I believe it had to do partly with homelessness.
Yep.
Make
Because
political
people were.
sense.
Sure, people
Yeah.
going in and garbage bins from restaurants and stuff and all that kind
I'm
of stuff.
guilty of this.
Well, I'll tell you
my
what.
gosh.
When I was a manager of
No.
let me tell you this. Here's an experience. I was managing a restaurant.
They're joking. They're
and
joking.
went
Oh, okay.
into the back to throw garbage away. Opened up the opening part of the dumpster, and guess what I found? A guy in there eating
away.
garbage.
Oh my!
What happened?
Oh,
So it's illegal
He
in
was
Texas.
eating burgers, so I brought him inside and gave him a meal.
Next one, you two. Go ahead,
Okay.
producer.
No carrying wire cutters. It is illegal to carry wire cutters in Austin.
Okay.
Cutting wire.
True or false?
they have lost their stinking minds in
I
Austin.
would say
Is
true.
it true or false?
It's true.
I would
Mr.
say
Producer.
true.
Mr. Charlie seems pretty confident, so I'm going to say true.
They're loony.
Go ahead. So this was a trick question. This was a trick question because it used to be until 1976.
I
I
believe
was
it.
right.
Until
Yep.
recently. And the reason was people who were carrying wire cutters were often doing cattle rustling
Yep.
or they were up to some shenanigans. So they made that draconian law. You couldn't have it.
I believe it.
The reason I marked this false is because it's still illegal. It's today is the whole premise. They got rid of it. So
Cattle rustling.
Yep.
I believe it.
Yep. Go ahead. Next one.
6, do not milk someone else's cow.
Bruh.
You're not allowed to go next door and milk their cow because you are stealing
Their property.
their property.
Yeah,
It is
that's-
property.
True or false, folks?
Theft.
True or false?
True.
True? Mr. Producer says true. What do you say, Charlie?
I'm going to lean true.
False.
Turn it over, Mr. Producer. It's
Bing, bing,
true.
bing, bing.
Oh, true. I believe
Because it's a
That's-
form of petty larceny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
form of petty larceny.
And it is petty.
You guys are
But
right.
it is larceny.
It's not your cow, says Tim. That's correct. It's not your cow. So how could you milk it? You're taking the farmer's product. It is.
Yeah,
It is true.
What would be next? Taking the cow and then putting it in the freezer?
Real
Yep.
mo-
Good point.
Yep.
Okay, here's one that we heard before from Miss Nikki. She talked about this. Can't shoot a buffalo from the second story of a hotel.
Read the whole thing.
It says, it is still against the law to shoot a buffalo from the second floor of a hotel. This law may not have been so strange when the buffalo were plentiful. However, there aren't many buffaloes around today that roam the streets of
True or
Texas.
false? Is
True.
this a law?
That's
True or
still on the
false?
books.
That's still on the
True.
books. That is the premise of this. So Steve goes true.
I'm going false.
Mr. Producer.
False.
All right, Mr. Producer, turn it over.
Bingo.
False. This is a common myth and legend. I had to go look at it, but
Look
it's
it down?
supposedly
Look it down.
Look it down. Look it up. Look it down. Okay, sorry. I am tired. If you can't tell, I'm slurring all over the place. Had a wedding yesterday after a full week. Anyway,
Too much Dr. Pepper.
too much Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper. If you want to do something nice for me, Dr. Pepper cream soda zero. That is my thing. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it when I get off this chair. So. This was a common myth that was passed around for years, but there was never a penal code attached to this. It is illegal if someone complains about the noise, but it's not specifically illegal if no one complains.
I'm 4 out of 7. I'll just have y'all know.
So it's brutal.
So I can't go shoot me a buffalo.
Nope.
No,
Nope.
I wouldn't do it.
that.
From the second
I wouldn't do it.
if I had a silencer, you see, silencers are now not an NFA.
No,
item.
that's not true. It's
Yes, they are.
it's
It's
passed
not-
the House.
Need number 8.
It passed the House. It is not passed the Senate.
But
Focus is correct.
it's going to. I
need number
guarantee you.
8.
You were correct. Go ahead, Mr. Next one, Steve. Go.
Number 8.
Hold
This 24-hour notice. Y'all will like this. Those planning to commit a crime in Texas must give 24-hour written or verbal notice to the person that they are going to rob,
True or false?
murder, steal, rape, whatever it is that they're
this
going
is so
to do.
weird.
True or
I've got to
false?
go true.
True or false?
False.
True, and criminals follow the law.
So we got fake. We got sounds fair. LOL. It's true. Okay, turn it over, Mr. Producer. False.
This literally reminds me of a show. I don't know if anyone watched the show Tough Puppy growing up, but the villains would always announce their crimes to the heroes.
It's that
before.
level.
Criminals always announce it.
It was proposed, but it wasn't passed. If I remember correctly, it was proposed in the 70s, but it was never actually passed.
Now that sounds like a Democrat.
Yeah, I believe it would have been.
That makes
No
my head
surprise.
hurt. Next one.
It's on the same
Yeah.
level.
Flirting.
Thanks, Steve.
Flirting
Please
with
never
the
do that
eyes
again.
or hands. Hello.
Is illegal
No,
in San
Mr.
Antonio,
Steve,
Texas.
Yes, it is illegal in San Antonio.
Okay, true or false, Mr. Producer?
I'll say false.
I'm going false.
False.
Okay, flip it over. Good call, boys.
Oh, yes. God, could you imagine how many people would be
I have
arrested?
To say, it's not because it's because of culture.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, well, Charlie, duh, we live in America. It's so accepted in our. That's not what I'm looking at. Who was part of that major culture coming up? Mexico.
Yeah.
How did they look at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I based that answer.
Absolutely. So, next one.
Yes. Let's see here. 10. Bells will be ringing. No, it's the wrong song.
Keep going.
Texas is a common law marriage state. Therefore,
I've heard of this.
two willing parties, not a willing and an unwilling party, who are over 18, and you got to be unmarried, and
not related.
This is key, unrelated.
I need that clip from Fallout.
Okay.
We have rules for that.
Unrelated. Are legally married if they publicly announce they're married
3 times.
3 times.
True or false?
I've heard this one before.
We got to pick up the contest sauce.
I'm going true.
True?
I'll say false.
I'll say true.
Put your comments down in 3, 2. True.
Got it.
Because
Wow, okay.
Texas is a common law marriage state. Basically, by the way, if you cohabitate, I believe it's for 3 or 5 years. Also, that is the case in Texas. It is considered a common law marriage.
And hold yourself out to be married.
Yep. And you hold yourself to be married. By the way, I don't know. I don't think I'm getting a marriage license when I get married. We'll write it in the family Bible, swear before God and the congregation and the people who are there. But I do not want the state licensing my marriage. My children are not your property, government. But anyway, that's a different issue. Keep going.
Yes. Windshield wipers, but no windshield.
What?
While you don't legally need a windshield, now you can drive around without a windshield, but it is illegal to drive without windshield wipers.
True or false?
True.
It sounds backward enough that it might be true, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. I'm going false.
Got to have wipers.
True or false?
True.
Tell us in your comment section. 3, 2, boom. It is true. It is
Got
just
to have the
backwards.
wipers.
Yep.
It is just that backwards. You can have a car without a windshield, but you got to have the wipers.
Yep.
In Texas.
Golly.
Yep.
Okay. Next one.
Your move. Oh, I love this one. This one is so good. When 2 trains meet at a crossing,
Wait. What?
both need to fully stop, and neither train can move until the other has left the crossing.
Wait. What?
False.
False? What do you think, Mr. Producer?
False?
True.
Flip it over, Mr. Producer. This is a situation
so-
Thank
where
you.
you have multiple laws that conflict in there. It's a terror. That's my understanding, is that you have a penal code system where you have too many laws and they're too confusing. That if I remember correctly reading, because I did this late last night, did all my fact checking and reading through. That's my understanding. This is best to my ability. If someone has a code, you tell me. But anyway, keep going.
Yes.
Next one.
No sitting on the sidewalk. Ryan, you can't sit on that sidewalk right over there. In
Galveston.
Galveston,
Okay.
you can be fined $500 for sitting on the sidewalk. Not laying, but sitting.
On the sidewalk. in
And you got
Galveston.
to, went now,
True or
should
false?
be sipping.
True.
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 Tell us. 3, 2, 1. True, because you have a huge amount of bicyclists in Galveston, and people want to throw their towels out on the thoroughfare that everyone's walking, and it's actually a public nuisance. I've been down there. I actually agree with this one.
Yep.
There's
I don't
a
want
lot
you,
of
there's a
drinking there,
beach
too.
on the opposite side of the seawall. Go over there.
A lot
Amen.
of drinking
Go over
there,
there.
too. People laying down.
And they're drunk and passed out. It's a nuisance.
You know.
It's a public nuisance. True bums mess this up. Yes, that's
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's why we have laws, unfortunately. Next one.
No showing stockings. And I'm not talking about the ones you hang on your fireplace. In Denison and Bristol, Texas, it is illegal to show your stockings, ladies. The penalty is up to a year in jail.
This sounds like another law that had
like
early
prohibition
origins,
like a Baptist thing.
and then it got removed.
Steve.
I'm gonna go false.
I'm going to go false. It probably got
Producer,
been removed.
tell us true or false. Not allowed to show stockings in Denison, Texas.
In Bristol.
And Bristol. True or false? 3, 2.
Oh.
This is a law that is still holding up. It's in the local penal code.
Huh.
Still to this day.
Oh, that's right. There was an officer that made an arrest last week.
So
Kidding, folks.
Could you
Kidding.
imagine?
That's really
Could
wild.
you imagine being a cop and arresting somebody?
I don't
for that?
think anyone's doing that right now for a lot of reasons.
But could you imagine?
Yeah, someone says that's oppressive. I agree. I think that is actually oppressive. That is over the top.
That would be wild, man. Oh,
So there are a couple on here that are actually bizarre and still in, and not just okay. Well, that's just a government failure and just stupid bureaucratic nonsense. That one's actually like, ooh, wow, that one's odd. Not in a good way. Next one.
No feather dusting in public.
Oh my gosh.
You can't clean in public. It is against the law to use a feather duster to dust any Texas public building. It's unclear whether it's the feather duster or the act of dusting that's illegal.
So true or false? And this is specifically applying to government buildings, Texas public buildings. You're not allowed to use a feather duster.
Okay, so I go back to my original comment. Austin is screwed up. So this is so screwed up, it's got to be true.
Mr. Producer?
True.
True.
Put it up there. It is actually false.
Oh, wow.
This is one that I thought was going to be true. If you can find this. Okay, so
That
this
sounds
is
like
false
it's
with an
true.
addendum. I could not find a single penal code, and everywhere I looked for someone to actually have a reference and a citation, there are 0 citations of this. But this is a document that's been circulating the internet.
So it could be true.
Very unlikely.
Okay.
Because everywhere I looked, where they did have a list of all of the different laws and myths about laws, this one was said either false or we cannot find the origin of this myth.
Steve, that's good stuff.
So that's been Steve Shenanigans. Thank you. And so this is a new segment we're adding in with Nikki Knows Facts. Nikki is coming back today.
She landed.
She's coming back today. So we'll bring back Nikki Knows Facts.
So your darling's back. Huh?
She is back. She
All right.
texted me and
good deal.
So we'll
Good to have her
some fun.
back.
We'll have her back, and next week.
Oh,
we'll
and
go
you don't
further.
want to miss to all our listeners, you don't want to miss next week. It is Sasquatch time.
Sasquatch.
Uh-oh.
We'll let you guess what that is, along
hunting?
with Mr. Producer. Nope. We're going to keep going. We're going to go into the Great Divorce.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to delve into that.
Chapter 10. We're going to go to Chapter 10 of the Great Divorce. For those of you who've been joining us, we've been reading the Great Divorce. We're now in Chapter 10. Mr. Producer, next slide. Quick summary of the Great Divorce. If you haven't read it before, if you're just joining us, this is a novel written by C.S. Lewis. What if heaven's judgment wasn't eternal, but rather you were allowed a trip to the edge of heaven to see the benefits of heaven? Would you choose to come to heaven if heaven's gates were calling? Now, next one, Mr. Producer, today's passage, we're going to be looking at chapter 10. If you've been coming along with us, this is a great case study in submission of the soul and of the personality. So in chapter 10, quick summary for you. In this chapter, the narrator and George witness a woman, ghost, being confronted by a heavenly figure. It's actually the mother of her husband. In regards to her salvation, the ghost can only whine and chatter about her efforts to make a man out of Robert, her husband, and how that was unappreciated. The ghost wouldn't even consider the opportunity of heaven without having full authority over Robert, whom she drove into a nervous breakdown and death, early death on earth. So if you are just joining us, this is C.S. Lewis's thought experiment. What if in the moments, and we've talked about this a couple times, what if in the moments between life and death, purgatory of some sort, not exactly as it's laid out by traditional Catholicism, but there's this opportunity to understand. You're able to come and visit the gates of heaven. Those who've gone on before you are able to meet you in those moments of death, prolonged into a long, almost seemingly infinite timescale where God is allowing people to come to him on their own terms, to understand who he is, to come to grips with, not come to him on their own terms. It's the wrong word, but to come to understand him in the time that it takes. God is sovereign. And you look at near-death experiences, I think Lewis was on to maybe something. There's something
you can't
there.
rule it out.
You can't rule it out that God takes time with people. To be separate, absent from the bodies, is to be present with the Lord. But I will say there are a lot of people who are saved after near-death experiences, and they were avowed atheists before. So I don't know what that time is, whether it's seconds, nanoseconds, minutes, hours, days. I don't know.
And I appreciate the way that you laid it out. It's not the purgatory that it's not like the purgatory that you would lay out in Catholicism, because there it's you have a lot of time. What we're talking about is you don't have much time. You're there.
Yep, that's it. Right. And so in this whole book, we're kind of seeing Lewis play out with all of the different sins and vices and some of the predilections of mankind. Why some people, even if they were given the most extraordinary opportunity, would still reject Christ's offer of love, joy, eternal peace. And so we see this conversation come into play. It's chopped up into a few different bits. For the sake of time, we're not going to read the whole chapter, obviously, on this. We only have about 15 minutes before the top of the hour. But I want to start reading. Mr. Producer, if you can go ahead and pull up cut 66. This conversation we also overheard. That is quite out of the question, said a female ghost to one of the bright women, one of the women of heaven. I should not dream of staying if I'm expected to meet Robert. I'm ready to forgive him, of course, but anything more is quite impossible. How he comes to be here, but that is your affair. But what if you have forgiven him, said the other. Surely. Well, I have forgiven him as a Christian, said the ghost, but there are some things that one can never forget. But I don't understand, began the she-spirit. Exactly, said the ghost with a little laugh. You never did. You always thought that Robert could do no wrong. I know. This is a mother coming from heaven, where her son is, to the wife, the bitter, we all know a woman like this. We all know a person like this who believes that everything that their spouse does is wrong and terrible, and it must be fixed by them. We all know someone who is like this. So be careful when you're reading this, that you don't read so much into someone else's sin, and that you don't forget that you too have some of this in you.
That's a good word. So
just be careful, because I remember the first time I read this, I have someone right off the top of my head, and I got convicted the moment I thought that, and I thought, oop, I do this too.
That reminds me of something I heard one time. You can't fix your spouse, but God can.
But God can.
Boy, that's a good word there.
And so be thinking about that. Be thinking about this as we read, because we're watching what could keep an otherwise charitable, kind, Christian, and I'm using air quotes for those of you on audio only, woman out of heaven. And Lewis, I think, brilliantly articulates this without saying it. So, Mr. Producer, this is cut 67. Please don't interrupt for one moment. You haven't the faintest conception of what I went through with your dear Robert. The ingratitude. It was I who made a man of him, sacrificed my whole life to him. And what was my reward? Absolute utter selfishness. But no, listen. He was pottering about on about 600 a year when I married him. And mark my words, Hilda, he'd have been in that position to the day of his death if it hadn't been for me. It was I who had to drive him every step of the way. He hadn't the spark of ambition. It was like trying to lift a sack of coal. I had to positively nag him to take that extra work in the other department, though it was really the beginning of everything for him. The laziness of men. He said, if you please, he couldn't work more than 13 hours a day. as if I weren't working far longer, for my day's work wasn't over when his was. I had to keep him going all evening, if you understand what I mean. If he had his way, he would have just sat in an armchair and sulked when dinner was over. Women, men come home. If your man's a working man and if you're a stay-at-home woman, your man wants peace.
Oh,
your man wants peace.
He wants a little relaxation.
He wants a
when he
moment.
comes home.
Yes.
He doesn't need the world, but sitting in the armchair after dinner for a few minutes is a good thing. And I know some people who constantly talk about their husband after he's been working all day. I'm just saying. And by the way, we'll talk about some men and their wives.
Yeah.
We've already talked about one man and his wife, the foreman and his wife. His wife did not have a good time. He thought he was a good Christian man, but he beat his wife. That's both sexes. Okay. But keep going, Mr. Producer. It was I who had to draw him out of himself and brighten him up and make conversation, with no help from him, of course. Sometimes he didn't even listen. As I said to him, I should have thought good manners. If nothing else, he seemed to have forgotten that I was a lady, even if I had married him. And all the time I was working my fingers to the bone for him, and without the slightest appreciation, I used to spend simply hours arranging flowers to make that poky little house nice. And instead of thanking me, what do you think he said? Said he wished I wouldn't fill up the writing desk with them when he wanted to use it. And there was a perfectly frightful fuss one evening because I'd spilled one of the vases over some papers of his. It was all nonsense, really, because they weren't really anything to do with his work. He had some silly idea of writing a book in those days, as if he could. I cured him of that in the end.
Oof.
I
love how Lewis shows and does not tell.
It's raw.
I love how he shows and
Yeah.
does not tell.
Yep. And to me, you said it a minute ago. There's so much that can be convicting.
Yeah.
And amen, 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 and amen. I couldn't agree with that more. And Lewis is probably one of the rarer forms of an orator.
Yes.
In our day. I really believe that.
It's interesting how he shows what is important to one compared to the other.
And he does it from the perspective.
What's not important to one and what's not important to another.
And in doing it this way, he actually humanizes her.
Yes.
He humanizes her, and it's her humanity that is the problem.
Yep.
And he makes that point. Next one, Mr. Producer. I did my duty to the very end. I forced him to take exercise. That was really my chief reason for keeping a Great Dane. I kept on giving parties. I took him for the most wonderful holidays. I saw that he didn't drink too much. Even when things became desperate, I encouraged him to take up his writing again. It couldn't do any harm. How could I help it if he did have a nervous breakdown at the end? My conscience is clear. I've done my duty by him, if ever woman has. So you see why it would be impossible to. And yet, I don't know. Go ahead, next one. And yet, I don't know. I believe that I've changed my mind. I'll make him a fair offer, Hilda. I will not meet him if it means just meeting him again and no more. But if I'm given a free hand, I'll take charge of him again. I'll take up my burden once more. But I must have a free hand. With all the time one would have here, I believe I could make something of him. Something quite to ourselves. Wouldn't that be a good plan? He's not fit to be on his own. Put me in charge of him. He wants a firm handling. I know him better than you do. What's that? No, give him to me. Do you hear? Don't consult him. Just give him to me. I'm his wife, aren't I? I was only beginning. There's lots of things I still want to do with him. No, listen, Hilda. Please. I'm so miserable. I must have someone to do things to. It's simply frightful down there. No one minds about me at all. I can't alter them. It's dreadful to see them all sitting about and not being able to do anything with them. Next one. Give him back to me. Why should he have everything his own way? It's no good for him. It's not right. It's not fair. I want Robert. What right do you have to keep him from me? I hate you. How can I pay him out if you won't let me have him? The ghost, this woman from hell, which had towered up like a dying candle flame, snapped suddenly. A sour, dry smell lingered in the air for a moment, and then there was no ghost to be seen. Do you see why heaven and hell need to be divorced? do you see why there needs to be a dividing line, a place where good is allowed to be good in the absence of evil? You can have good in the absence of evil. Good is perfection. Evil needs the standard of perfection to encroach upon to exist. Unfortunately, those in heaven, and Lewis said it really well, I believe in Mere Christianity, he says, you will not always allow heaven to be held hostage by the will of man. Our will, unregenerated, unconformed to the image of God, will turn into the deepest, darkest depths of what we call hell, and what the Bible calls hell, given enough time, if it is not changed by the regeneration and the renewing of Christ's blood. That is what we face. That is the difference between heaven and hell, and that is why the dichotomy must exist.
Boy, this woman here is a control freak Karen, man.
Don't we know a few, though? Don't we know a few? We know a few of those people. And look, it's easy to complain about these people, but at the end of the day, we all have this capacity in our bones. Given enough time, wouldn't anyone become their own form of Hitler, their own despot, their own dictator, if given enough time and power?
Yep.
If given the power, probably so. Some might abuse it, but I don't. Man,
given enough time, given an eternity, without Christ,
without Christ, I would agree.
Christ, and
I would
that
agree
is the
with
purpose of heaven. And that is the purpose of hell. And join us next week. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk about a few different things about Sasquatch. We're also going to do chapter 11. So if you're following along with us, go ahead and keep up. Get into chapter 11 of The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. It's not saying how great divorce is. It is talking about the large, the amazing, the awesome, awe-inspiring, awe-struck divorce of humanity as one side cleaves away from God and one cleaves to God. Final thoughts, Steve?
Yes. Just kind of going over what we talked about with the items with John Adams, you know, the things with the government and setting up government, it is so important that everybody reads all of these old documents for history purposes in order to learn everything that is going on about our country's history. Not just white people, but everybody. I'm talking all people of all colors, everybody that wishes and wants to be an American in this country needs to know everything, the founding of this country and how it was built, everything about it. It's foundational to this country.
I wish I had read a lot more. I read some of these documents in high school. In middle school. I really wish we had a lot more.
And you know what? They're not. It's not being taught in most of our schools today.
No.
Charlie, final thoughts?
I have two very quickly. Number one, I've got to agree with Steve. John Adams, his wisdom in looking at how to form a government. I mean, it's almost as if he dreamt of it. Like he just grew up and all he could think about was, you know, if we did this and if we did this.
Well, in a way he did. He lived under oppression and he studied all of the great scholars in the Bible.
That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the Great Divorce, I was just thinking about this. The older I get, the more it pains me to think about how much life I've taken away from people. Our words are life and death. What we speak, folks, golly, it can go both ways. What are you doing? The great question that you should ask, am I a building block or am I a stumbling block?
So 100% agree. And I'd say this, wrapping up for the day. Start with first principles. What I mean by that is, John Adams said it very, very eloquently. If we're going to put together a nation that is meant to incite and foment virtue, we should look at what the most virtuous form of government is, and we should build that. If we want a place for our children to live, what kind of place is that, and what kind of government structure would provide for that? If we want a culture that is fit for our children, if we want a culture that when we get to the gates of heaven and God says, "What have you done?" we're able to say, "We built a culture that loved you," or "We were a force for the culture, in the culture for you." Maybe there are some words, some phrases that we need to ditch. Maybe there are some things that we should really think about how we say, because our words bring life or they take life, like Charlie just said. Start with first principles. What am I doing for eternity? If this world is, and we just had this conversation with a young lady about the understanding eternity. If you understand that eternity is so much bigger and so much greater than this world, then you're going to fight harder. Fight like hell, dare I say. For Christ, for liberty, for truth. And you've got to remember the end when you're beginning.
Yes.
Remember the end in everything you do. Remember the end at the end of the day when we have conversations with those out in the public place, the play place, the workplace. We're trying to be winsome for the gospel if you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian, hopefully for truth and liberty, which, by the way, if you pursue that long enough, I believe you will.
Amen. You'll end up there. Yep.
So start with the end in mind as you begin, and everything will shape out, God willing.
And that question by Adams, what is the end of government?
What is the end of government? What is the end of your speech? What is the end of your thought? And what is the end of our rules and laws? Final question for y'all before we move on. What was your favorite stupid law? What's the one that stood out to you? Tell us in the comment section. What is the dumbest law?
Barefoot.
Barefoot?
I'd say barefoot.
Barefoot, Mr. Producer?
Barefoot.
Barefoot. I love "Don't milk your neighbor's cow." It's just, it feels so petty. I feel like there was someone who went to Congress and goes, "Hey, I'm so tired of Jensen over there. He's been milking my cow. I'm going to make it illegal to milk my cow." That's what I heard.
$5.
Stay out of my garbage can.
Stay out of my garbage.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I
tell you what, I want a law. Jim Bob keeps coming over in my garbage can. How that guy fits in it, I don't know.
Tell us your favorite down there. And with that said, we got nothing else for you. Love you so much.